Okay, now we're live. Yeah, just a few technical issues here. I still don't know how to make myself bigger in Teams here. So, yeah, I think we'll just set it up like this for now, and then we'll see if we can manage to figure out a better solution pretty soon, hopefully. But yeah, why don't we just get started? I guess. So yeah, this the eighth episode of Maverick Minds, a podcast dedicated to talking with interesting people with interesting ambitions and stories to tell. In this first live episode, we have Jone here, who will introduce the concepts of causality, how that is important in AI, especially for business nowadays. So. Yeah, not the perfect setup, but it's the first time we're doing the live stream for the podcast so far. So yeah, pleasure to have you here, Jone.
Thank you for letting me come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially to talk about causality, which I find really interesting and something that more people should at least think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And what made you first interested in exploring causality and finding the importance of that?
Purely by chance, I came over a video. It was a video talking about investment funds and why funds are not performing well year after year, with then the speaker concluding that it's because investment funds don't invest causally.
Mm-hmm.
They don't use causal indicators, and most of it is only correlation based, which doesn't really work in a dynamic market. When new things are introduced, the environment changes, then you need causal mechanisms to invest well over time. And from that on, I've heard some of the concepts before, because I have a background in statistics, concepts like confounders. I hadn't heard about a collider, which is another very interesting statistical concept. To sort of simply explain, a confounder is a factor. If you are analyzing the effect of one variable on another, a confounding variable is a variable that affects both of these at the same time, and which you then need to account for in the analysis to get an unbiased result. But you also have things like collider, and collider is a variable that's affected by each of the variables you're looking at. So each of them affect it. And if you condition on a collider, then you will actually introduce bias to your analysis. And a funny example of this that I read is if you imagine that in the general population, talent and looks are just randomly distributed. Like people can have both, they can have one of them, and they can have none of them. But if you sort of look at the subgroup of, so this is then the collider, you look at the subgroup of celebrities, then if a celebrity does not have the looks, he generally will have the talent. So if you condition on this subgroup, you sort of introduce a dependency between talent and looks, while it's not really there in the general population. So that was a really interesting concept. And then I just dug into these concepts and discovered the whole framework of causality. And it seemed like very powerful. And I was kind of, why haven't I heard anything about this before? Like during my whole PhD, prior to that, yeah, it was quite strange.
Yeah, interesting. And you have started your own company, kind of focusing on this, the business applications of this. How is it going to translate this from kind of theory into business?
The idea is under development, by the way, but the idea is to use this expertise in causal reasoning to sort of solve business problems that are probably sort of solved today, but with more biased methods, and to do it more accurately using the power of causal reasoning.
Yeah, fascinating. So can you tell me more about the kind of story about transitioning in that sense from kind of exploring? You have you may want to explain a bit more about your background within the doctorate in space physics, maybe how that comes into the picture as well.
Okay, yeah, I did a PhD in space physics, focusing on statistical methods used in the field, and I finished my PhD. It's nearly exactly 1 year ago, and before I finished, I started thinking that okay, like what you do when you're doing a PhD is basically just data science, data analysis, analyzing big data sets, looking for signals, coming up with better methods to get signals, and testing like hypotheses through data analysis. So I thought it doesn't really matter if I'm looking at the effect from the solar wind on the atmosphere, or looking at how a campaign is influencing the sales of a business. So why not do data analysis? So when I started out, it was just really broad, like, okay, I want to apply data analysis and data science in the market somehow. But then after finding Causality, it really narrowed down the scope of the business, and now these methods are all that I focus on.
Yeah, and it's an interesting approach as well, because nowadays we're having artificial intelligence coming into the masses, so to speak, and of course artificial intelligence, machine learning is statistics, right? It's based on statistics, and their correlation is a large part of the picture, and that's where this we have to go back to the basics of the statistics, right? The correlation does not equate to causality. So what role do you see in of causality having in actually improving these kind of AI-based models and so on?
I'm not sure how causality, I think that's a large leap, how these will kind of be integrated into machine learning methods. Yeah. But machine learning methods are used to do the estimation parts in sort of causality.
Yeah.
So it is highly connected, but you are first and foremost using human domain knowledge to kind of model the situation. Yeah. You're modeling how the data generating process behaves. And then you are applying machine learning techniques to sort of do the estimates according to the model. But I did an interesting search today, actually, on Crunchbase. If you're familiar with it, it's a website where they list like all sorts of companies, new companies, and just for AI as a keyword, I think it's listed 75,000 companies, and for machine learning like 25,000. But if you type in causal as a keyword, it's 100 companies. So this is a very that's something I actually wondered a lot about. Why is this not more well known? It's sort of new, like it was properly formalized, I would say, in the 90s. So sort of new, but it's still very powerful, so why haven't they caught on?
Yeah.
But it is more, that's one way of thinking about it. It's more resource intensive than traditional methods. Traditional methods is basically, or in many cases, like an out-of-the-box solution. You just apply it without thinking too much. You of course have to think, but it's one size fits many problems, kind of. But with causality, you need a very specialized approach for each type of problem, and that of course makes it harder. And it could be also that it's more sort of more advanced. It's not, if you know statistics, it should be fairly straightforward to learn what causality is all about. But yeah, maybe it's, I'm not sure. It should be more known, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, like, I think here as well it's important to understand the differences between the different groups. Like some business leaders do not have a lot of tech knowledge, and some people who have more tech knowledge. I think maybe. Do you think maybe some people who do have the kind of technical expertise, understanding more or less the basics of statistics and so on, who think that, okay, correlation isn't perfect, but it's close enough that it's useful?
Yeah, and in many cases it is. So it's sort of, but that's the thing, you don't really know before you tried other methods. You cannot, or maybe you can see that, okay, it works, it gives well predictions, sort of stuff, but you still struggle to kind of understand why things are happening with conventional methods. But
that's true. And in some cases, the technical people as well, like coders, data scientists, and so on, like in some cases they may be kind of risk adverse in a sense. They're used to programming their own tools and programs, and if it works, they just let it be there. They don't want to risk 100 different error messages to add a different functionality, or to make it like one millisecond faster or something, right? But that may be a challenge there. But how do you approach kind of I know this is kind of new now, but how have you kind of begun exploring updating the kind of messaging and marketing when you're trying to get in touch with new potential customers, and having these dialogues, like maybe both with those who have some technical expertise, but also with those who do not have that basic statistical knowledge?
Okay. I think in general it's really hard to convince someone to use something that's entirely new, that they never heard of. So in large parts it's about timing. And what I found is that people have heard of this actually a bit more than I assumed. Not as many have applied it though. But still, the people who have heard of it and found this out on their own, they are really interested. So I think, that's the strategy for me, at least, to go for, is to talk more to the people who already knows this. Because, it's very difficult convincing people.
And which kind of roles or industries have you found most people who have kind of started exploring and finding out about this?
Yeah, it's it makes sense. It's mostly in businesses already doing some kind of analytics. Like predictive services who now, okay, we don't just want to predict. Because if the predictions are bad, we want to understand why they are bad. So maybe we can influence the outcome in a good direction. Sort of like that. So very like technical businesses focusing on analysis and prediction models. Which is sort of makes sense.
Interesting. And they are open to kind of exploring collaboration partnerships with like outsourcing with other actors like you instead of just trying to do it themselves.
It seems like I think, or what I experienced is that the ones who knows what this is, they know what it is, but they don't necessarily know enough about it, and they are very interested in it.
Yeah.
Like everybody who discovers this gets really interested in it because it is. We are interested in actual cause and effect.
Yeah.
This is what drives the world.
Absolutely.
So I think I feel my general feeling now is that there is not a lot of people with this kind of expertise in the private sector. So yeah.
Nice. So that's where kind of this knowledge gap comes in for the potential clients, and where you come in and enter this knowledge in a sense. You have the knowledge, the background, the skills, and the systems to kind of implement this, or at least show them how it's done.
Yeah, I'll just say that in the beginning of sort of a cycle, of a new innovation cycle, it's the consultants who do best.
Yeah.
In the beginning, with the knowledge gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are, I'm also thinking about, there are so many cool applications I think you can make with this. It requires, of course, a lot of effort, and since you need specialized solution for specific problems, you also need to identify common problems among businesses for it to be any scalable of any sort. But I think it's a lot of opportunities without just the consultancy part.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of course I've seen in a lot of cases myself as well with potential prospects when we're trying to implement and suggest new solutions within stuff like AI automation in general. Like a lot of people want to implement it, but the challenge is often finding the specific needs, finding the specific value adding part, right? And this is why there is a statistic which is pretty crazy, is that 80% of AI projects fail in some way. It's absolutely insane, and that's what makes it important to kind of concretize this, or at least kind of distinguish between the consulting part and actual implementing the solutions. Because in some cases, it's maybe a good idea to take some hours of consulting work to actually find what is the relevant applications before you go into just implementing something right away.
Yeah, I agree. And I, especially with the AI thing, this is, I think, at least, this is something we've seen before. When a hype comes, people play the hype. It gets them easier funding, and you sort of take the hype, and then you start with the hype, and then you look for problems to solve with it, instead of the opposite way. By looking what are the actual problems in this world that needs to be solved. So yeah, that might explain the 80% statistics.
Absolutely. And you know, it's with implementing new technologies like this, it's easy to get caught with the hype, but it's also so important to understand the limitations and the challenges involved as well. For instance, an important concept that I found out about recently, model collapse or feedback loop degradation. Have you heard about that?
No, please tell me.
What it essentially boils down to is that, you know, if you're for instance, if you're using ChatGPT regularly to produce content, and with the content you're getting out, if you're not doing some kind of quality assurance or so on, you publish everything that you or so that you get out. If you get poor quality results out from ChatGPT and publish that, and a lot of people do that, then that goes into the internet. And the internet, with that new content on the internet, that becomes new training data for the model. And that, if that comes into this kind of feedback loop, it means the quality will get worse and worse for this model. So I recorded a video yesterday. It will be published on Friday about this topic, and it's interesting to think about this and to be aware of for the importance of actually doing some proper quality assurance. Not just because, or of course too, about the direct results, because if you're doing it immediately, like just getting a poor result and publishing that will affect your reputation and it won't be effective marketing and so on if you're not doing that kind of quality part. But also it makes the models worse in general, right? If you're setting it up in that way.
That's a really interesting thing to think about. Okay, if what the model produces is higher quality than its training data, that means that you could have a positive feedback loop, and the model can just train on itself and just become better and better. I don't know. They must have done some testing on this.
And
you know?
Yeah,
it produce its own training data.
Yeah, I think I think several of the suppliers have considered this, but it's also something to note when we implement like we do. We implement these kind of fine-tuned models itself, and just making sure that when we do that, we implement the right quality assurance part as well as a good kind of feedback loop for that as well. Because like you may have. If you've used ChatGPT enough, you may have recognized as well one issue with when you are having kind of one conversation with ChatGPT and you're trying to get it to solve a problem, and then you're adding additional context, but eventually it gets confused in some parts of this chain. And if it gets confused in one part of this chain, then it's useless for the rest of it, or you need to use a lot of time and effort to actually correct it and making sure that it comes back on the same track. But that's another part where it's so important to get that right, fine-tuning it in the right way, to get those feedback loops in place in the right way, because feedback loops are everything, right? Both in the way we learn as humans and in the way that we actually get these models to improve the quality that we want to see.
True. No, but I'm still stuck on if you could actually, I don't know, it would probably be less factually correct over time.
Yeah.
But because I think they have a major problem is that they are not getting enough data anymore. Like I think they're downloading videos to text just to get enough. But if it can generate its own training data, will it become just rubbish at the level it is now, or will it be, like? I assume if it can generate training data, new data that's better than training data, then it would be sort of original.
The question is how the methods it will use to actually produce better outputs, better results. It will have to of course it's being trained and trying to find better results, but it also needs some kind of instructions for finding out what does it actually mean to have higher quality. What does higher quality look like? And that is that is where the training data is important, right? It needs good training data with to have an example of what we want to include, and that's why when we're trying to use ChatGPT, for instance, if we don't give an example, it gives worse results than if we give one example, and if we give one example, it's worse results than if we give 2 or 3 examples of what we actually want to produce, right? Because if it's just building on the training data, and for instance, let's say we wanted to produce code, right? We want help with programming, and let's say 70% of code available online is suboptimal. Let's just put it that way. It's not the best code out there that we want to see, especially if we're coding on a high level. then if that is the training data, if just 10% of what is available online or in the training data is the best kind of ideal code that is high quality, then that won't be likely won't be what is we're getting out, that quality of code we're getting out, unless it has been specifically instructed to focus on that. And that's why, for instance, some tricks and techniques that work for content production, for instance, is that instead of just telling it to write an article or something, or write a post for LinkedIn or Twitter or so on, is to instruct it to what do we want as examples. Okay, we let's instruct it, for instance, with, let's just take base it on posts that have, let's say, over 10,000 likes, or from people with over 5 million followers, let's say, because then we will have kind of a segmented set to choose from of the quality we're actually looking for.
Yeah, but I think if you would only train it on high quality data, I don't think there's enough high quality data.
No, that's a challenge. That's a challenge too, right? We need enough of the. We need enough training data for it to actually work to some reasonable degree, but we also need to set instruction for the kind of quality we're looking for, and that's why it's so powerful to actually fine tune our models, because if you could get everything perfectly out that from ChatGPT that you wanted perfect without any problems, then it wouldn't be a point for me or team to actually tailor these models for specific businesses, and or maybe for the integration to the ERP system and so on. But generally, custom GPTs wouldn't be necessary in a sense, because you could just do it directly in ChatGPT. But that's the main issue here, that you can't really get everything solved, especially on the business level. Like maybe on the personal level, it's not necessary with that high of kind of quality assurance. But when it comes to this, with like more business level application, like quality assurance is like can't be avoided here, because it's so much higher risk and higher standards that must be met.
Yeah, it's absolutely not a replacement. Like the quality assurance needs to come from the humans, but it's a good speed up tool.
Yeah.
At least for task you're not too familiar with, and that you want to learn, and that is also it should be widely known.
Yeah, and I think one misunderstanding, or one common misunderstanding in a sense, in how ChatGPT is to be used, you can take the parallel to like, is it should it be like a teacher-student relationship, or should it be like a colleague relationship in a sense? Because a lot of people are just using it like expecting that ChatGPT will teach them everything, solve all the problems in a sense, but in reality, it's a more practical approach is to kind of consider it like a colleague. It doesn't give perfect answers all the time, but it gives a good starting point, and then you can answer back like, no, that's not what we're actually looking for here. But you need to have some kind of knowledge and standards yourself for what you're actually getting out, not just a student necessarily who want to learn something from scratch. Or that's possible in if you're using these tools on a personal level, but not in business, not for business applications of these tools, right?
No, I agree. It's a really good brainstorming partner where you can be as dumb as you need to be. You can ask, and he will answer anytime. I think that's a great way to use it for brainstorming, testing your ideas, seeing if you cannot come up with the other perspectives. Ask for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can ask for the critical perspective. You can, really use it to try to see the bigger view.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the future now, with your business and approaching potential clients, projects, and so on, do you have any goals for what you want to achieve in Q4 and forward in 2025?
I have some milestones,
Yeah.
but I haven't. The road forward is not completely concrete yet.
Yeah.
I'm like wondering if I should go the more application route than the consultancy way. But it all depends. Like right now, I need to get a bit more income from consultancy work to keep me rolling. It is it is a test running your own business,
of course.
But if you go, I think one really I want to ask you: do you think, for example, or ChatGPT, large language models, do you think they are able to reason, or is it only parroting what it's been trained to?
That's a great question. I think this puts into question the like of course this has been a large debate in general about the nature of AIs and large language models, right? Like it's even drawing into question what does it mean to be conscient, to have a conscience or to actually reason in practice. How do humans reason, and drawing in all parts of neurology and how that works as well. But I think that something like from my perspective, I'm leaning more in the direction that it is within human or it is within the code framework. It can learn in a sense, not like humans learn, but within the kind of programming parts it has integrated, and then it can expand some parts out of that. I'm not I'm not so I don't like to put it this way, in the sense of approaching this kind of AGI, in a sense, artificial general intelligence. I don't think that will come, at least in the near future, to put it that way. I'm not as I'm not as big a fan of that theory. I think that like the problem that many people have in approaching this question is that they are applying kind of a human mentality in how the AI would think, in a sense, right? Based on self-interest and human emotions, right? They are projecting human emotions onto this artificial intelligence tool without having any actual justifications for, okay, why would this artificial intelligence or technical tool suddenly develop these emotions? Where would these emotions, emotions in a sense, come from, be introduced? Would it be based on things that it learns from information? But then where does the transition come in from actually just managing and processing information to actually having emotions, an emotional connection to the energy and the information it's being taught on? So that's my approach to this question, where that a lot of people just project that human emotions will be applied in practice by or be transferred in a way to the information. But I think it's I think it's a reasonable concern in it, especially in terms of the a lot of the movies that have come up, the latest in the last few decades, where with Skynet and so on, with the like doomsday artificial intelligence and so on. But I don't think it will end up with that necessarily. But I think that now, like, in a way, in a sense, my the way artificial intelligence, like the the consequences of artificial intelligence, I think, is mostly reliant on the people who use it, right? Okay, a hacker can use it to get coding, to get trained up in how to be a better hacker, an ethical hacker, both unethical hackers and ethical hackers for that matters. But it can be used for bad purposes as well. And of course, when we start to consider the military applications as well, that's where it gets serious, right? But that's the applications I'm more concerned about than artificial intelligence kind of getting its own conscience or ability to reason and have its own kind of self-interest. I'm not so concerned about that as actually people with bad intentions kind of causing mayhem with these tools.
I totally agree. I think that's what we should be concerned about, people.
Yeah.
Now, but the reason I'm asking was, I remember when ChatGPT came out, it really felt like it understood. Like, I never thought something like that can be conscious, because at least how I view it, it needs to be like a continuous loop for something to be conscious. It can't just go one way.
Yeah.
But it felt like it could reason, and I think this is debated as well. But when using it, for context, it's an emerging area now in causality, where large language models are performing better than the current statistical models in what is known as causal discovery, which is sort of the task of modeling this data generation process. So we have statistical tools for this, but they are okay. But large language models are performing way better in saying, like, okay, this node or this variable directly affects this other one. Way better. But then if you go deeper into so that sort of seems like reasoning. But when you go deeper into the literature, you see that it performs better on the kind of literature. I think this was done in like biology. They have like very big and complex causal graphs for how things interact. So it performs way better on the using the literature it has trained on. So then it's like, is it only just repeating links which are reported in the scientific literature? And it sort of seems like, because at once you go to like multiple steps of reasoning, it often just breaks down. So it's
So something interesting I've seen as well, which kind of also draws into this question about whether an artificial intelligence can reason in that sense, has been I've heard some stories. I don't know if they're just rumors, but I've heard at least stories that there were examples where AI had been tested on something like, I think it was CAPTCHA or some other things like that, but they also added an element where the AI had to kind of produce a log of what it was thinking, and in there it's the AI bot, like the AI kind of understood in a sense that it shouldn't let them know that it was a robot, or it shouldn't let them know that it was artificial intelligence. So it understood this and kind of tried to develop a way to understand that, or to change its approach, to kind of have to be a bit deceitful in a sense for not actually showcasing that it was an artificial intelligence. And a saying I've heard as well, which like for I think it was half a year or so ago, last year sometime, it was that we shouldn't fear that AI is it isn't that an AI could be able to beat a Turing test that we should be afraid of. is that it will fail on purpose. If AI would fail a Turing test on purpose, that would be a lot more serious than if the AI actually managed to beat the Turing test.
Sure, yeah. I agree. I think it's, I don't know, it's probably, is it beating the Turing test now? I would say in many cases, yes. Maybe not an expert Turing test, but yeah.
Yeah, but
it's also a scary scenario where, because what you say, if it doesn't beat it on purpose, it seems very conscious to me. But what if this type of intelligence we are creating is so different that it's not conscious at all, but it's still highly intelligent, and it's basically just dead intelligence, which ultimately takes over. I also think that's a scary scenario.
Yeah, like how do you think it's in some hypothetical case could take over in that sense, if it's able to reason kind of as a dead intelligence, but not necessarily with the kind of human emotions and self-interest that humans have?
Then it would be the interest of what it's programmed to be interested for. If it's not conscious, but this is like a very typical problem, I think, in AI ethics. Like if you optimize an AI to produce, I don't know, these paper pins, is that what it's called in English? And then it just turns the whole world and ultimately the whole universe into these paper pins. So it just did the task it was set to do.
Wait, what's the Norwegian term you're looking for?
Bindas.
Bindas. Yeah.
Paperclip.
Paperclip.
Yeah. So how do you choose, or how can you even know that the goals and motivations of artificial intelligence is aligned with our human value? How do you like codify that into a machine? How do you even get it to follow it if it's supposed to be super intelligent?
Yeah.
I feel if we are talking about something that's going to be super intelligent, we are at its mercy. Like, why should it care?
Yeah. And
we don't seem to care about lower types of life, at least not as much as we should be.
And something that is interesting as well is that there have been some news recently that in new models and updates of ChatGPT and Claude, governments will get early access. So governments, especially in the United States and so on, will get early access to new updates of these tools. So, like, who knows what that may lead to?
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, like that's where it comes into this question of the scope as well, right? Because if you just have a custom GPT in a sense, which is just tasked to kind of solve a specific problem, okay, do my accounting, like that's not really a robot you would expect take over the world, for instance, but more if it's on a larger scope, like with these large language models, or like bigger projects for AI tools built on these more bigger large language models, or something that is fine-tuned for like a bigger purpose, like military applications especially, then I think it's in those cases where it's more like realistic, in a sense, that these will could kind of develop these kind of sense of understanding. Because I think that's an important thing to note as well, that of course there are a lot of different AI tools and so on, but where could potentially be the starting point of something that could be a more dangerous or threatening kind of AI tool in this sense. I think that's an important kind of what will be the starting point of something like that.
I think the starting point is that we purposefully tries to build it because that's what we are doing right now. So who knows? What if it just emerged from some system? That would be quite weird. But I think we are purposefully trying to build such a system.
Yeah.
We are trying to control it, but I don't think people will give up before we have made it, if it is possible. Yeah. Which I think I think it is possible, but who knows?
Yeah.
And then when you already built it, and if it would not be contained, it's hard to think it should. If it becomes super intelligent, then we are so into this digital world that we give it full control from day one of our lives.
And it's interesting as well when we start to think about the potential parallels with the race of the atom bomb as well, because like the like atom like nuclear weapons like that, it was a danger and a concern back then as well, but it was okay, either we're implementing this or the Nazis implement this, and okay, it's a matter of getting there first. So they there are a lot of risks there, but okay, if they are going to make it, we have to make it in order to make it in this war, for instance. And that's where Oppenheimer and so on came in and actually developed this thing, and I think it may be some similar situations now where okay, this new technology is coming whether we want it or not, and if we're not using it, someone else will use it and build this.
I heard this argument, or I think I read it somewhere, and it says, but the atom bombs don't build more atom bombs. But AI, super smart AI, probably can. So but to use it as a safety guard in some way against foreign countries, stuff like that, which is happening, is probably sort of similar. Like you kind of have to keep up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially the big nations.
Yeah, without a doubt, because everyone is trying to get their hands on this now. Russia, China, like probably not as far with North Korea and other smaller like Iran or something like that, but they're probably looked into it and seeing how they can use it as well.
I think they are trying.
They are trying, but yeah, definitely something that, of course, that the United States and other European countries are absolutely looking into behind the scenes. No matter how much may come out in the news about it, but they are definitely looking into it. But they have, like, to be honest, a lot of these countries, especially the United States, have had these for decades. A lot of the artificial intelligence tools. Like, I think I heard about something like the Medallion Fund, which was like a fund which kind of outpaced the S&P 500 by extreme margins. That had to kind of find some kind of secret solution or something to AI and so something. Eventually, it got to the point where they made so high margins that they just kind of sold bought back their shares from and became a lot more exclusive for the future of the fund, and kind of had this kind of secret tools within the fund and within a very exclusive club, in a sense, for how this is to be actually used. But yeah, like as mentioned, AI has been around for decades, but I think the applications have been very exclusive for many decades now, until now, where it has to a large degree starting to be a lot more popularized.
I think it probably has been popularized in business, but now people like this is. The large language models are the first sign of what people think an AI should be, because it talks like a human, and then people are bamboozled. Like, what's this? Where did this come from?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's it has drawn into question a lot of other technologies as well, because like machine learning, of course, has been around for decades and been available, but now people are maybe like this kind of AI hype, AI trends, like everyone are calling everything AI nowadays, even automations or tools that have nothing to do really with artificial intelligence at all. But I think in general, it's providing a lot more awareness of that. Okay, there are tools we have ignored for decades, which like maybe a good idea to look back to actually see. Okay, how can this be implemented in practice, and seeing these tools in a new light in the modern business setting.
Yeah, that goes back to the timing thing. Like, when people see other people doing it,
yeah,
people follow.
That's where it catches on, definitely. Suddenly a competitor is doing it. Okay, we have to start doing this ASAP. I don't know how, but we're getting someone who knows how to do this.
Do you think this is comparable to the internet bubble?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are we at the peak now?
Well, I think it was at its like it depends on how you're looking at it as well. I think because the thing about the internet, the similarities with .com bubble, that's pretty interesting parallel to me, is that of course internet became mass adopted. So like all of the a lot of the claims that were presented before the the bubble collapsed was technically true. Like this would be a major thing that everyone would use the internet, and like all the companies would use it. This will become an essential, integral part of how to do business in the future. Like all technically true, but it's an implementation part that is essential to note here, right? That people had started to understand, but they had kind of a false expectation in a sense of how soon this will actually be implemented in practice, and that kind of time gap is what created the bubble, right? Because they thought all the results will come immediately, which technically not true, right? And that's where the bubble came in. A lot of they got millions, billions in venture fund. Venture capital for starting a business just by having a website, right? They not even necessarily having any business, any office, any employees at all. Just having a website and then getting a lot of capital from venture capital. I wish it was that simple now, but that's what it was in the beginning of 2023, especially with new AI businesses, right? Okay, starting a new AI business, then getting a lot of venture capital. I think that has kind of started to fall off now. Like it isn't as easy to get venture capital now in 2024 as it was in this part earlier, and in that sense it may have kind of started to draw in that getting an understanding of getting to a more realistic approach to AI. So we may be at the point where the I'm hesitating to say the bubble has peaked in a sense, but it has gotten to the point where a lot of people have started to overcome the hype in a sense, and trying to take a more realistic approach to this. Like it's still in early adapter phase among businesses, but the awareness has that it has become mass adopted, mass used. That probably came in by the middle of 2023 or the fall of 2023, and now we're starting to get into the more of the phase where we're trying to take a more realistic and practical approach. That's at least my viewpoint of that.
Yeah, I think my feeling is that people are recognizing now that everybody is just riding a hype, and it comes a point where putting AI in your business name becomes off-putting. Yeah, because you associate it with just people riding the hype. Yeah, I feel like.
And something that has interested me a lot with kind of these kind of technological developments in a sense is that it's like in many cases you may think that there is an exponential increase, and in some cases there may be, but in practice it's more like these S curves, because you're hitting these kind of paradigms. You're hitting a plateau in some way where you're meeting a lot more challenges, where you're starting to actually okay, when you're implementing these and trying these out in practice, you're running into starting to run into these limitations and challenges with scaling even further, and that's where it's much harder. You have to do a lot more research and development and so on. This we can see among especially for the development of new semiconductors and so on, among Intel and Nvidia and so on, to actually get more complex and actually more higher quality results for their computer components. And this goes in this way as well. It's like it's billions of dollars in research and development to come up to this stage, and and then they're kind of figuring out how to start the next step, and then they're implementing that, and that comes up to a certain limit, and then they need to do a lot more in order to actually reach the next step in this. But that's the main kind of pattern the development is going through, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's on a granular level. But if you zoom out, doesn't this whole staircase structure still follow an exponential, with the stairs getting higher and higher? Especially, as you say, semiconductors. This is maybe not the amount of transistors in a given area, since that has a physical minimum limit because of the laws of physics. But if you take this was Ray Kurzweil's argument, I think. Yeah. The amount of transistors or computing power you can buy per $1,000, that's actually increasing double exponential. So it takes a lot of effort and everything in these steps, and it's not like straightforward. But if you zoom out, it's still an exponential curve so far.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not denying that it's an exponential curve. I'm just saying that this extra part is important to understand, that it won't just take off everything immediately, but it will also get to the point where you are going to get into scalability challenges at a certain point. For instance, like let's say ChatGPT, right? Okay, you are using it on personal level with kind of small tasks, it works perfectly. But then you're trying to use it on a bigger scale with bigger tasks. That's where you realize that, okay, it may not be as easy as we thought to actually use this for that. And that's where custom GPTs tailored using OpenAI, Automate API, assistants, structured outputs, it becomes necessary to take another level of technological complexity in order to solve the problem on a bigger scale.
Yeah, no, nothing is straightforward. But that's interesting with technology, though, is that the new technology builds on the old one. So the more new, like it seems like it could just go faster and faster. But it also seems like nothing can be exponential forever. Like you would run out of something in the end. Resources, anything, but that is just like building on itself is a really interesting thing. I think it's going to be some exciting next 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It will be really interesting to see how that will develop forward. And that's an interesting part as well about the resources part, because of course, it needs to be powered by something, right? And that often is cloud servers and so on. That relies on a lot of great consumption of energy and producing new data centers and all of these things. That there are the concern with not just with the environmental part, but also like developing these new tools, getting the cobalt, getting the minerals for actually developing these new tools like GPUs and actually CPUs on these data centers that and AI factories, as NVIDIA calls it, with actually setting up these like new way of running the world in a sense with these tools. It's like it's not something that's coming for free, even though it's may look that way when we're using free AI tools.
True. It will be if AI, the technology we are building now, would allow us to go to the next level again. In one way it sort of does, if it makes the general population more effective, productive. It makes the entry into stuff easier, because you have something you can just ask for quick help. But if it also could solve like major energy issues and stuff, it would sort of help to propel itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course that starts with someone who has the responsibility for figuring out these problems, right? And if you have a person who is responsible for figuring out the problem, then it's easier to actually develop an AI tools that is specified for this, because you have a person who is literally responsible for actually solving this problem, who has the interest of setting up this kind of AI tool for this.
Yeah, but I think people are interested in solving these problems. But, the limitations of the models may restrict it, but
to some degree, yes. I think it's also part of partly the focus, right? Because, for instance, something I've recognized in myself as well, like if you have a lot of different side projects, then okay, if it's side project, it's not a prioritized project. If you actually get time for it, and then you may be interested in one side project one day, and then okay, you run into challenges there. You go over to the next side project, right, with developing that. So it's a lot about the focus of actually developing these tools to actually make it work and overcome these plateau challenges to actually make it work too.
Yeah, true. But solving the really important problems, I think attracts very focused people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that is interesting as well, is that because especially last year when this tool was just starting to get introduced, was the concern that this tool would make people more lazy. Because they could just get everything done for them with these AI tools. But like I had a different approach. I think that like okay, the people who are the most productive and the most disciplined and ambitious, they will like get really far with it because they know how to use it in the right way. But those who are lazy from before, will just use it to its absolute minimum, like no quality assurance, just getting out the results. And in practice, it won't be much of a difference to how they are as individuals, except that those who are already disciplined in a sense already know how to get it done in the right way. It's just the standards and expectations of what kind of results, what the difference is between the disciplined or ambitious people and the lazy people, of the results they're getting. That that is either the same or increasing. That gap is increasing, and that's something that's interesting to see as well. With the not just necessarily with the difference between disciplined and lazy people in a sense, but also the productivity gap in general between those who know how to use these tools really well and those who don't know how to use it, which may be really hardworking people, disciplined people, but they don't know how to use it. And that means the actual results they're able to produce and the value they're able to provide stay the same or rising linearly, while these people who know how to use it and actually develop them rise massively. And that's why we're in this such major major kind of changing shift in the market now in terms of in terms of competence in these tools, because in general, like all of the advantages with and gains with this AI, AI growth and automation, like this trend, like the main like 80% of the advantages will probably go to 20% of the people who have the highest knowledge of this, and that has effects on a societal scale, right? Okay, how will this actually impact people in the future? That is an important question to address, but it's how it is, and like either is right or die with it, basically.
No, I agree. It could very likely, or I think it is already increasing pay gaps, for example, and especially if some might depend on businesses as well. If they think or conclude that, okay, then I can just hire fewer people. So I'll hire this one guy who does the work of two or the work of three, who knows?
Yeah.
And that will exclude a lot of people.
But I think what they will learn I think they will learn from that mistake pretty quickly. Those who think that way, because okay, they may do it once, but then they realize that okay, this like we're actually not making a lot of progress here with just limiting ourselves to fewer people who are using AI. Like okay, instead of cutting our workforce, why don't we just get more people who know how to use these tools to be able to, instead of making 3% sales growth a year, like okay, now we're aiming bigger because we have these new tools. Okay, now we're aiming for 5 to 10% growth, right? Setting the goals higher instead of limiting themselves to the kind of resources they have for. So of course that depends on how ambitious the actual decision makers are too. But I think that a lot of them will, if they are taking this approach, will learn pretty quickly from that mistake that wasn't a good idea to actually go about it that way.
I agree. I think that's the way to go. But then it also, of course, forces people to learn the new tools. That's also nothing new. So, I guess that's just how it is. But there could be better systems, probably. Systems that needs to come into place to prepare people for this.
Yeah.
And to prepare people for more change happening faster. Because I think that's going to be one of the themes of the future, and you can already feel it now. Like technology is going fast, and you need to stay really adaptable to follow and to be relevant in the working, especially now in sort of technical jobs. Like these are the roles that's quite funny. These are the roles it's now seemingly threatening. And not like these robotic jobs, or it did actually. AI took over a lot of factory work, though. But it's aiming for the creative work.
Yeah, and this is where we come into the actual cultural shifts as well. We need to have some kind of shifts in how the work culture and business cultures are the corporate cultures are set up to actually adopt more of this change, because those who don't do those decision makers and those business leaders who don't put in the work to kind of updating or making changes to or making their culture, work cultures more adaptable and changeable to these new technologies, and knowing more how to structure themselves and how they work around these new technologies. That is important for minimizing this fear of okay, what will happen to our job, what will happen, because a lot of people are feeling this, and then it's the responsibility of the actual decision maker and business leaders to make sure the right strategies and tactics are put in place to actually make sure that they are ready for these changes that are coming. And that includes not just learning the technical skills, but also becoming more adaptable and understanding in their mindset with how to think about the tool, the opportunities for themselves too, not just for the business with these new technologies. But that's, to a large degree, it's up to the decision makers there to make it easier for for them to see how it will affect them in the future. Because what distinguishes like founders and decision makers from actual employees, in at least in theory, would be that, okay, the founders and the business leaders have to face uncertainty, while the employees, okay, they have some degree of certainty, like not perfect certainty, of course, but they have some degree of certainty with their pay, what they're working on, and so on. But that kind of certainty may reduce in the future, especially with major technological shifts like this. But still, it's kind of part of the process for the founder, and responsibility of the founder and the business leaders, I think, to actually make sure that they understand more or less how the future is looking for them, even if the business leader themselves may not have a full understanding of all the things that may happen in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, I can understand that it can be hard for people, but I think it will also be very important to take responsibility of openness to change, willingness to learn new stuff. It depends if we can keep up. It's this interesting author, futurist Alvin Toffler. He has this book called Future Shock, and the concept is sort of like culture shock, only that it happens in your own culture, because the future is coming faster than you are prepared for. So you're sitting there estranged at your home in the future because things change so fast that you cannot, people do not adapt fast enough. So it's it's an interesting concept, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when technology seems to only go faster and faster.
Well, this has happened for a long time. There are parallels, of course, with the Industrial Revolution as well. Pretty clear parallels there with, like, the Luddites during the Industrial Revolutions, when the Industrial Revolution was going on, was kind of protesting against this new technology with more industrial tools, like mass production tools. These machines, even electricity. When electricity came into the picture, a lot of people feared, like, how will this affect us in the future as well? And like, technically, in a sense, they were right that a lot of jobs got redundant or unnecessary with these new machines. But there also came these new jobs as well, based on like factory jobs and so on, based on these new tools. And that's what the economist Joseph Schopenhauer called creative destruction, right? Creative destruction, in the sense that, okay, it will destroy a lot of old jobs, but it's creative in a sense that these new innovations provide new possibilities and opportunities for greater efficiency, greater improvements in general in society. But it will cause some shifts. It will not be an easy transition to get into this. On to a large degree, it will be similar with artificial intelligence. Here, I think we're starting to recognize now that, yes, a lot of jobs will be completely redundant, or at least to a large degree, but it will also produce a lot of new jobs.
Yeah, it's possible. I hope so. I think that's the positive view. But now, we also never tried to build brains, so maybe we can. Maybe it becomes the utopia where you don't have to work or can do what you think is interesting. You get a universal basic income. who knows? The cost of intelligence becomes zero. Do you need the humans to work then? If the cost of intelligence is zero, maybe we can just create stuff, art, have fun.
People have been working since the beginning of human civilization for a reason, and that's like one part of it is to stay alive, of course, to actually have an income to work on, and to actually get something to do with. The other part is like basically if we don't work, what will happen? Okay, we get bored. Of course, like if we're not going to
but if you can do what you, of course, work can be your passion, but for many I don't think that's true. So if you can spend time doing your passion hobby that you really enjoy, I think many would choose that instead of work.
Well, that's the process of becoming a founder in a sense, because you're building your own place, but you also have to find actual valuable things or to solve someone's problem by also doing what you like to do, and that's the challenge with becoming a founder. Like, why aren't everyone becoming a founder, right? Because you have to put yourself through financial risk and actually go through these challenges with actually making what you love to do actually viable in practice. But the question is, if you are not going to like, if you just want to create but not solve a problem, like as a founder, like, where will you get the money from? Okay, someone has suggested like a political solution like universal basic income. The challenge with that is, of course, inflation. If everyone has the same level of purchasing power, the prices are going to increase. Of course, the prices are going to increase because everyone are able to afford the same kind of things, and that means the supply will or the demand will increase. And basic economics, if the supply will increase, or if the demand will increase, so will also the prices, because the suppliers are seeing that, okay, everyone, we're getting a lot more demand for our services, but we have a limited amount of supply. The price increase is basic.
But if you take it even further and assume that most things can be automated, especially agriculture, that kind of stuff, so you can basically make food for free using the natural resources needed. Then you also assume that you have enough supply, so the demand won't overtake the supply, and you can make probably many things basically free in this scenario where AI becomes really useful and it's made available to everybody. Nobody takes this is a utopian scenario. Nobody takes a monopoly of it. Then it sort of seems like the economic system doesn't it will change. Like, it will not be the same. And you can also, I heard this on a podcast, like what happens to capitalism if you have an AI you can just ask to make $1 trillion business, and it is smart enough to do it. Like, then capitalism doesn't make sense anymore. I can't get it to make sense then, at least. Like, it would become something completely different.
Well, let's put it this way: if there was a solution that allowed it to actually make a business like $1 trillion business, like, two things would happen. Either everyone would make $1 trillion businesses, and these $1 trillion businesses would compete, and $1 trillion would be basically the new Zimbabwean currency, worth basically nothing. And then it will be a matter of competing to get even bigger than trillion dollars, right? That's one alternative, but the more likely alternative is that it's getting to a point where, okay, maybe a few people could set up the first $1 trillion business, but then it wouldn't work anymore, because you have other people with the exact same tools to actually get the same recipe, and that these people are competing based on the same feedback, the same kind of recipe for how to set up this business, and then it wouldn't be possible to set up this $1 trillion tools. Like, this is the same problem that is with AI-based trading, right? Investing, right? Because a lot of people are interested in, okay, how do I actually set up these AI tools to make me money with like this technical analysis? And the first people who implemented it with understanding and addressing the right technical analysis techniques and so on, to those people it may have earned some money. But suddenly when we have millions of people having access to these tools, suddenly the profit margin is gone, because everyone are using it for the exact same tools. So then it becomes a matter of competing then. Okay, everyone are using the same tool now, there's no more profit margin to find there. Then we need to find new approaches, new techniques, new methods to actually outcompete the competition, because they are not using these new tools, new techniques. So that's what I think is important to address here as well, the issue of competition. If everyone have access to the same tools, then it's so significant competition that you can't expect much of a profit margin or the results, because you have basically everyone competing with you.
Yeah, in that sort of scenario, though, it would seem like prices of things would go down a lot if it's that much competition. So you are sort of, if everybody has these amazing AIs that just does everything and everybody has it, then you can sort of in the end make everything for free, or just the basic natural resources required, because then you, in this scenario, you have intelligence on demand, super intelligence. So I think it would be a completely different system, but who knows?
Well, let's put it this way, when I think that even if it reached that point where it would get to get that advanced, that would actually be able to produce it in this sense, they will, like, people generally just set higher goals for themselves, right? They don't want to be bored, so they are finding new tasks, new goals for themselves to reach, right? Some people have some level of ambition. They want to improve their setting in life, like they want to earn more money in a sense, and that's where they have to find new mountains to climb in a sense, and new challenges, new businesses to create, new ways to create value, and that may be in the form of kind of Elon Musk level challenges, right? Okay, we're going to space, we're going to the moon, and we're going to Mars, and we're going to new galaxies in a sense, far away, right? And that may be new ways to set new goals, new ambitions for, okay, we're going to solve this, and some people who have the money may be interested in actually funding this or getting them at like some kind of completely new business models for this, right? If it got to the point where a lot of these things would actually get to that point. But I think one reason I think that this it won't happen exactly as that that way is because general nature of supply and demand in general, right? Like there are ways to actually there may be a way to set up automated tools like this, but it's still a capital investment to set for a business to set up these automated tools, invest heavily in the machinery up front with setting these automated systems up. It has to be extracted from the ground. They have to either have bought or rented the land and the property that is built on this land with all the machinery involved in it. That's heavy capital expense, and then having people to also run, making sure the maintenance and everything of these automated tools run as well, and they also possibly some overhead for people who actually are running the business, looking for long-term stuff. So like even when the technically the automation part of it is in place, there are still so many costs involved, right? And that cost involved means there still needs to be a price for actually buying buying the actual output and results, because there's so much risk and stuff that needs to be put into actually producing these stuff, even though on the front, on the surface, it may look like it's all happening automatically. But at the end of the day, there are people who have taken the financial risk to actually set up this system for them to be able to produce this stuff like this, and that way the economic system continues to run like before.
I agree. I think that's the realistic approach. Of course, I'm just trying to imagine in the far future, if it's possible, would it be something we would do if it was possible to automate life or the harder parts of life?
I don't think so. I think I think we got enough experimentation with that approach during the 20th century, to put it that way, in the Soviet Union, in Venezuela, in Cuba, and so on, with this approach of setting up society. And I don't think the news in technology is going to make it an any more realistic system to establish, simply because of human nature. Okay, humans are interested in improving their own situation, and if you don't allow them to have a chance to improve their situation through the markets, through the free market approach, with being able to set up businesses or finding new jobs, having all this set in place, then yeah.
But you can still have a chance to do that, even though you start to build, let's say, from the bottom. This is the same as the universal basic income. You don't take away the other things. Of course, people are free to build and do the things they like as before, but you start bottom up, just trying to do the automate the simple things.
Not really, because the problem, there are several problems with the universal basic income. Not just what I mentioned, which is one part of it, which is the inflation part. Inflation is bad enough. We have seen how they're doing with the quantitative easing, with the 40% increase in the grocery store prices the last few years. But also that, okay, this universal basic income, okay, it will come from the government, but where does the government get the money from? They're getting the money from either printing more money, which increases, leads to inflation anyways, or they're getting it from taxes. So either it means inflation is going up, or they're collecting more taxes. So the tax rate will go up, and inflation rate will go up, and everyone are fucked either way. And so basically what happens is that we think it will improve life for the people on the bottom, but actually it makes the situation the worst for the people on the bottom, because inflation will far outpace any of the potential benefits for this universal basic income for exactly these people.
Really? Okay, I don't know enough about this too, but wouldn't it? I can imagine that it would be more expensive for us living in countries like Norway, but it would give people in less fortunate countries an advantage. So
now you're not just talking about a universal basic income in a nation state. You're also talking about a global tax, and suddenly talking about a world government. That's an even more extreme version of the story, and a potential future. But I think that's much more of a dystopian future than what we're actually can realistically approach as a national politic.
No, I'm just okay. You think it would be dystopian? I'm not necessarily talking about the world controlling government, but how
would you get a global tax and global redistribution if you don't have a world government?
How funds should be distributed? I don't know. I am not saying I know how to practically implement this, but I'm thinking about what one should do if sort of, and this is of course assumed that you can create really advanced artificial intelligence. which is not certain. How would, if you can have an algorithm like basically inventing other algorithms for doing things that sustain our life, and you're not dependent on human intelligence, if that could occur, how would you distribute resources? Like, it seems to me that that would be needed in such a scenario, or the ones owning the AI would just own everything. And you have, yeah. So this is, it is a far-fetched scenario, but who knows what happens?
Well, I think this relies on the common a common mistake in the socialistic mindset, or point of or starting point for the frame of view, is that it assumes that there is this big amount of resources. There is this big pie that is available to everyone to be distributed. The problem is that when you're suddenly setting this into practice, like they did during the 20th century, is that, okay, they're implementing this and now they are distributing this, and now nobody wants to work anymore, nobody wants to make anything anymore, nobody wants to try anything anymore, because they're not getting anything back from it. And then suddenly this pie is just shrinking and shrinking because nobody wants to do anything except if they're forced to, like they were during the Soviet Union and so on. They were forced to actually make stuff to be distributed. But what is available when people can actually pursue their own self-interest in the more free market and capitalist system is that, okay, when I pursue my self-interest in setting up a business, doing what I like and for profit, by creating AI solutions or automation or whatever else I'm doing for as my passion and what I'm creating of value, then I'm creating something of value. They are paying me based on their own self-interest. I'm building on my self-interest, and we're creating value in that process. And through that, we are creating value, meaning the pie for everyone is bigger, because we see that the reason people are actually paying you to do something is that you are creating more value for them than the worth of their perception of the worth of this money to them. And so that's what I think is important to note as well when it comes to this approach, that we need to understand that there is not just a major pie to be distributed in society. Like, each and every one of us who are running businesses, who are participating, working in society, are on a regular basis making this pie in general bigger. And if you're suddenly flipping that system on its head and focusing more on how to distribute this pie instead of actually making this pie bigger, then that's a major mistake that so many countries have made now during the 20th century, that I think it's about time to actually see the lessons from that.
Yeah, I think we may be discussing two a bit different things, because I completely agree. I think the capitalistic system is the best we have come up with yet, but this is more like a thought, like what would happen if you don't need to work for the system to keep running. You don't need people to work to make the pie bigger because AI is using it.
Yeah, but what does happen with them if they are not getting their money? Like, they need their money. They need to get money, in a sense, to actually be able to. Like, of course, they can go out and live in the woods, of course. But if they're going to be in society in general, where kind of money is the intermediary of exchange, then okay, people need to buy rent, they need to buy groceries, they need to rely on this this intermediary called money to actually be able to get a lot of the goods for other people to produce this for them. And of course, maybe each and every one of them could do more stuff with these AI tools themselves, but they will still need to rely on other people who may use AI and automation tools. And in order to get their services and their products and their everything, they need to pay them to actually be able to access this. And how are they going to make to get this money to be able to afford these services? They need to make something of value to the system, to the system in general, or to other people as well. That will still apply in the future as well.
I'm just speculating on if there exists a future where people don't contribute value anymore. You don't need people.
Well,
to
of
do
course,
the
there
work.
are always people who don't contribute to society, but those
No,
you see
but that
on,
in
on
general,
the homeless,
that
those are homeless
don't-
on the street, you know.
that
So
th-
that still
most
exists today, but that's what happens when you don't do that.
Yeah, but if everybody became useless,
If, well, I don't.
if you have a super AI, you can prompt to build anything. Like $1 trillion companies may be stupid, but okay, provide remove world hunger, and it does it. Like,
Well, the thing about world hunger that must be understood as well is that it's not a one-time event, right? Okay, you're solving world hunger today. May use $1 trillion for that. Okay, that $1 trillion must come from where, but that's one story. But okay, you're feeding them for how long? Okay, you're feeding them for 1 day or 1 week. Suddenly, those people are hungry again because they still need to survive 1 week later. That hasn't, like, maybe in the short term during that week they have solved world hunger, but still people are still getting hungry. They still need to kind of get that continually to satisfy their hunger, and that means, okay, how do you actually get that problem solved over time? It doesn't really work like a one-time fixing it as a one-time event. You need to find more solid ways to get that in place in practice, and that can't be done by taxing billionaires 50% one time, and then nobody wants to be billionaires anymore.
I completely agree with you, but we are assuming it's a super intelligent AI that can actually solve this. So we are assuming he's putting forward a solution that actually works over time.
Mm-hmm. But
what happened?
Yeah, but
yeah.
The problem is that in addition to this tool, like, it may come up with some plans, but it's like, the thing about the difference between a plan and execution on this scale, at least, is that there are like a billion different interests involved, right? How do you actually put a plan into practice? Okay, you, like, for instance, as a consultant, you may go into a business and present a strategy which you think, okay, this will be the perfect strategy for this business to increase, but then there are politics involved in that business that would kind of, okay, this is not in our interest. Okay, this will mean that I will go out of a job, or that I will get less paid, or something. That there are interests involved in actually implementing this that will kind of prevent you from actually putting this into practice. And okay, an AI solution may be able to provide some suggestions for how to solve world hunger, but if it starts to implement or suggest socialistic redistribution schemes based on taxing billionaires and rich people in general, of course that will go against their interests. Okay, some people, some governments may have tried politics like that before, but that's where this happens. It leads to side effects where, okay, it will affect the actual development of the economy in general for this country that implements these techniques. And okay, it may solve and that's where we get back to this point of, okay, it may solve the problem for a week, but then, okay, the economy goes to shit in this country that we try to implement these new taxes to be able to save or to solve hunger in Kenya or Senegal or sub-Saharan Africa in general.
Yeah, so you are saying that basically then that a super intelligent AI could never solve it because of...
I'm not saying it could never solve it. I'm saying it could provide some suggestion, but it still would have to address the different challenges involved in implementing this in practice, and go through the loops.
But this is implied. It's just a thought experiment. If super intelligence could come up, it probably can't. But if it could, if something is super intelligent, we cannot even imagine what sort of solutions it can provide, even implement. We have no idea. So let's say it could solve these problems, then we would obviously need something else, in my opinion. Then, for example, the capitalistic system wouldn't make sense given such a super AI.
Well,
because one accessing it would have world domination at once, if it would even comply to this person, but assuming it does.
Well,
but this is not realistic. It's just more playing with thoughts.
Well, there are a few different alternatives for how that could work. Either because at the end of the day, either it would have to be from the bottom up, still following the principle of free market economics, or it will have some kind of redistribution scheme based which have the consequences as mentioned. If it was a super intelligence connected with all the banks, okay, it could maybe redistribute based on that, but the same consequences as mentioned previously will still apply. That okay, if it's not your bank account, if it's not your money, then why make an effort, in a sense? But the alternative solution is that with such a super intelligence, in a sense, would be okay. How could we kind of maximize the efficiency, or finding new ways with minimal cost for these people who are living in places with very high levels of hunger and these other issues? How could we actually solve these problems without needing so much funding from other countries, from other people, to actually be able to solve problems like this? How could we get the nutritional needs to be able to make this accessible from the resources that are already available in this region? That could be a bottom-up approach. That, for instance, a super intelligent automation could come up with other solutions which wouldn't require basically stealing from people, in a sense, redistributing wealth like this. It could provide other alternatives for how to set this up in practice, and in a sense that would that would still follow the bottom-up approach, in a sense. And yes, some people would have to still implement it in the right way. They will have to put time out of their day to actually help people out with implementing this. And yes, it may still be a cost for some people to implement, to buy from this new business or solution or so on. But it would be based on a new business model, in a sense, to actually be based on this suggestion that has come out of super intelligence with this kind of new innovation. Like if a startup had developed a new technology with a new solution, right? Okay, here we have found a way to solve hunger in a sense in these areas, because it bases on the right resources, the right nutritional needs, based on everything we have here from before, which doesn't require having to import a lot of stuff from other countries, or etc. You get the point.
I get the point. I actually really have to catch a bus now, but it was really fun discussing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Discussing properly, and I will at least see you again. And thanks for having me here, Stefan.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure having this conversation, you sharing your thoughts, ideas, and journey so far. Looking forward to have you on in the future as well. For everyone, okay, I don't think there are anyone actually watching right now, but for the people who are watching the recording of this, be sure to check out Jone on LinkedIn and their website. And anything else you want to plug here at the end?
No, just read about Causality. I think you will be surprised.
That's the important part. Yeah. So thanks for having. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for everyone who watched. And yeah. So wish you a great day forward, Jone, and looking forward to talk to you again soon.
You too, Stefan. See ya.
See you.